Hello there everyone, it's Game Dev Dad, and today I am going to do a little Unity tutorial on random animations using the new Mechanim features in Unity 5. So I came across this article that said that there were some new features in Unity 5 about the state machine behaviors, and specifically that they added some new events called on-state machine enter and on-state machine exit, and that you could easily trigger a random node within the within sorry, must be a car going by. Anyway, you could trigger a random node inside this sub-state machine just by using a little bit of code. So I'm going to stop and close that door. I'm back. Sorry about that. I just closed the door so we wouldn't hear the garbage truck coming by. It's kind of annoying. So anyway, the guy writing this article, Pierre here, he said that it should be simple stuff that we can do with the new features. But there was somebody kind of in the comments that ran into a few issues. Let's see if I can find simple, or maybe it was easy, he said. Yeah, so calling the presented solution for random nodes easy is quite a twisted definition of easy. If you ever make a tutorial out of this post, what about moving the random node selector around, blah, 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 blah. So anyway, I thought I would make a tutorial out of this post because I did run into a problem when I implemented this, and it actually did take me an hour or so to kind of figure out what the problem is. I don't know whether it's a bug with the implementation in Unity. I'll kind of post this on the Unity forums and ask whether it's a bug, or if you guys do have any suggestions, because I'm definitely not an expert on these new features, then you can post in the comments and let me know that maybe I'm just not using it correctly. But basically, this is a sub-state machine. So all is it saying is that, if you have multiple idle animations that you want to randomly select between, you can make a sub-state machine. Whenever it enters into the sub-state machine, it should trigger this on-state machine enter function down here. And then you can set an int to idle index, which is going to pick which one of these you go through, and a random range from 0 to 4, so 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4. The orange one, of course, is the default one, so it whether it's 0 or whether it's any other number for this idle index number, it'll go to the happy idle one. Otherwise, if it's 1, it'll go to here. If it's 2, it'll go to here, or whatever. I'm going to write something that's a little bit more involved in that, just so that you can kind of set priorities, not really priorities, but if you wanted to play a certain animation more than other animations, I'm going to do a simple way that you can create an array to select that, but nothing too fancy. And this was just an example that I was using in one of my projects, so I wanted to actually use it. Okay, so let's get started with a blank project, and I'm going to use the model that I actually was using in my project, which is this Triceratops dinosaur that we purchased from Baltazar. So this is a really good Triceratops, and it has a bunch of animations, including a bunch of idle animations. So you can see that it has idle head shake, idle look around, idle bothered. So it has a bunch of idle animations, and what we wanted it was to kind of stay in the idle state while it was walking around, or while it was standing there for a while. But every once in a while we wanted to do one of these other ones, idle head shake or idle bothered or whatever. So I'm going to import this model into a blank scene, and we will get started from there. Okay, so I created a brand new project here. It's completely empty. First thing I'm going to do is just create a folder for Jamesy Games, which I always just do this just because whatever plugins or whatever I load in, I just want to know where my stuff is. Sometimes plugins aren't good about keeping their stuff out of the root assets folder. So it gets a little bit confusing. So I always just want to, go in here and create my folders inside my Jamesy game. Oops, scripts. So, okay, so all I have now is a Jamesy game folder in here, and I have a scene in scripts. First thing I'm going to do is file save my scene. And then I'm going to save my scenes into the scene directory, and let's call it the random idle scene. Okay, so in here I should now have random idle scene. Good. Okay, let's just import game object, 3D object, a plane. Okay, so we have a plane here. Let's get this up a little bit. Okay, looking good. Let's call that the ground.
Are you recording?
Yes, I'm recording. Okay, so now I have a ground plane. Let's try to find, get in here, make a folder for textures. Oh, sorry, folder. Textures. Okay, I'm going to pause and I will just go find a ground texture to put on here. Sorry, I just went and grabbed a couple textures to put on here. So I'm going to go in here and make a material. Let's create a folder called materials. And then in there I'll just create a new material. Make it just a standard material, set this texture to be that one, and then the normal map is that one, and it is opaque. That's perfectly fine. So now I have a little bit too glossy there. And let's just drag that and call that material the ground material. Let's fix that. Sorry, this texture map is not set. The import settings is set as a more. Okay, so it fixed it for me automatically. Good. So now I should be able to go into this material, grab that, put it on there, and I have a ground material on there. But let's change the tiling of that to be like 10 by. That certainly didn't work, did it? Oh, sorry, that's a secondary. Doot, doot. All right, not really as repeatable as the name seems to apply, but we've got a ground anyway for our guy. Okay, so very simple. I'm going to rename the main camera without a space. Don't know why they've defaulted to things with spaces, because I don't like spaces. Anyway, okay, first thing, I'm going to import the Triceratops that I have purchased. So I think that is in my collection here. Let's see where I got it. Under T for Triceratops, probably. There we go. So let's import that. All right, import this guy. Okay, so now it is converting it to a Unity 5 project. I have a Triceratops here, and there's the asset folder that it put it in. So let's put the prefab in here, and now I have a nice scene with my dinosaur. Let's just align the camera, main camera. Let's align that with the view, move to the view, align with view. So now I should have the main camera looking at the dinosaur, similar to it is in here. Maybe let's get in a little closer here. Move to view, align with view. Okay, so here's my camera preview. It looks good. Right now, if I play this scene, he's just going to be in his normal idle pose. Okay, and that is basically because if you look at the animator that's on the mesh, It has an animation controller here that they provided, and that controller, if we want to look at it, Triceratops control. Okay, so they basically have a controller here that is triggered off of an anim parameter here. So it actually would, there's a script in their demo scene that would switch so that it can go to some of the different things. But we're going to completely rewrite this. So we're going to write one where we where we randomly pick between different idle animations, as I said at the beginning. Okay, but anyway, we've got a good start here. So first of all, I'm going to get rid of this this lower level of detail. So I'm going to delete that from the prefab, and I'm just going to use this Triceratops mesh. So actually, let's just get this outside of there. So we're starting from, get rid of the prefab. Okay, so we have our guy here. He's at the origin. We're looking at him. He's got his normal root stuff, and he's got his geometry. And on here, there is a Triceratops control, but we are going to rewrite that. And let's look at that. Let's look at doing that right now. So I'm going to go into my Jamesy Games folder, create a folder called, create folder called animations, animator. Let's just call it animation so we have all our animation data in there. And then let's create an animator controller. Okay, and I'm going to call this, let's call it the random idle animator. Okay, and that doesn't currently do anything. Right now, it just has nothing. Okay, so any state, exit, and whatever. So let's get this started just with an idle animation. Okay, so I'm going to go into the Triceratops, and I'm going to look at the meshes, and then I think this one, Triceratops mesh, does have the root animations in it, so I think it's going to be this Triceratops animations here. So you'll look here and you can actually preview here. There's the idle animation. So let's start with our animator controller like that, but we do not want this one. I want to go to this one. Okay, so I'm going to grab that that animation idle, and I'm going to pull it in here. Okay, so now we've got entry going to idle. And let's change this to be using the new one, which is the random idle animator. And now when we play our scene, we should see, let's get this animator window, and let's just put it, sorry about that. Let's just put it on this side over here, there. Okay, so that we can kind of see it side by side with that. Okay, so very simple. Right now it's just running the idle animation. So we're almost there. So what I was saying at the beginning is this one has this idle animation, which is just the one we saw, normal, just kind of breathing. But it also has the idle bothered animation. So when you play this one, you know, he just looks around a little bit, wondering what's going on, saying, why are humans looking at me? I was extinct 65 million years before humans were on the planet. Idle head shake. He's going like, now you better not get close to me. Okay, and idle look around. Okay, so. All right. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4 different idle animations. Ultimately, what I'd like to do is be able to, you know, play the idle animation, you know, half the time or something, and then other times go in and play one of these things. Okay, so what the article says is to do this is basically add transitions from an entry node to your states. Okay, so what I was trying to do was to make a sub-state machine and basically have the idle animations in there. So you right-click here and you say Create Sub-State Machine. So I'm going to create this machine, and I am going to call it the random idle state machine. Okay. So what I would like to do is go into that by double clicking on it, and okay, I would like to put all of those idle animations in here. So let's get these. Okay, put these in here. Okay, we have idle, idle head shake, idle look around, idle bothered. Okay, so we're going to make transitions from the entry of this substate machine into each one of these states. And then let's go from each one of these to the exit state. Okay, now as you can see, the default behavior for each one of these is going to be the condition has exit time is checked. So what that basically means is once this animation is played once, this is the duration of the animation that's been defined, then it should transition to the exit node. And then my guess would be that it should then go to the base layer, which is our main area here, and then enter in the state machine again, come in the entry point, and go into whichever one of these, the transition. So as I said before, the orange one is the default. So right now, since we don't have any trigger state, any conditions that's causing it to go to any of these other ones, it's going to always go into idle. And we can kind of show that right now. So let's go up here. Let's get rid of this. Okay, delete that puppy. So now we have, so we basically have the default behavior here to just go into our random idle state machine. And then once it gets in there, not that we don't have any parameters or anything, so it should just always go into idle. Once idle plays once, it should go to the exit, and then it should go to the base layer, should come in entry, should go to idle. That's what I would think. Unfortunately, that is not what happens. At least when I did it yesterday. Okay, so it's running idle. You can see it going down to the exit state, but you don't see it coming in entry and going up here. It actually goes here because this is actually the default animation for that layer. And I think that's where either the bug exists or either it might be just a feature of the animation system. But it's basically from exit, it's just finding the default animation for this layer, and it's going straight into that animation without coming in the entry node. Like I said, I'm going to post to Unity to see if this is actually a bug, and it should actually go through the entry, and I'll tell you why. So the next stage of this thing is, okay, you'll need to assign each of these transitions an integer condition. Okay, so that's going to be a parameter here. So let me add a parameter. It's going to be an integer parameter, and let's say it's the idle anim ID. Okay, the default value is 0. So here, right-click on it. Oh, no, don't right-click on it. Just click here, add a condition over here, and add anim idle ID is equal to 1. And when it's equal to 1, it should now go in here. And let's do the same for these other ones. Oops, I'm going to have it equal to 2. And this one is equal to 3. Okay, just to double check, this one is the default. It'll always go there, whether it's a number other than 1, 2, or 3. If it's 1, it should transition into here. If it's 2, it should transition into here. If it's 3, it should transition into here. And then, of course, when any of these finishes, it goes to the exit node. Okay, so that's all set up. Everything's looking good and clean. But now let's go to the third step of this, which says add a state machine behavior on your idle state machine and implement the on state machine enter. So this new method here. So it's very simple. You go here, and there is an add behavior, right? So I am going to add behavior, and it's going to be a new script, and I am going to call it the random anim behavior. And I'm even going to use a Canadian spelling. Okay, so they do a good job here. They make some comments so that you can understand what everything is doing. So the one we want, and just be careful because on state enter is not the same as on state machine enter. So on state enter is every time you enter one of these states. On state machine enter is when it goes into one of these state machines or sub-state machines. When you create it, it's called a sub-state machine, but it's the state machine, one of these. So you have to make sure that you add the behavior to the sub-state machine here, because if you add it to one of these states, then you will never get the trigger of that on-state machine enter. Okay, so we want to use this one, on-state machine enter. Okay, so I'm going to just uncomment this override, and I'm going to put just a debug log in there. And I'm just on state machine enter. Okay, whatever. Okay, and actually let's do the on state machine exit as well, just so I can show you that it is actually doing it. Okay, so that would be this one. Let's call it on state machine exit. Okay, so basically when it leaves the state machine, which is going through the exit node here, it should call on state machine exit. When it enters, it should go in here. So if we play right now, we look at our console down here. Get nothing. Where's my behavior? What? Where'd my behavior go? There it is. Yeah, there's just some weirdness going on with this. I think maybe there's some... There. Okay. So I don't know what happened there, but there's must be some bugs with this system since it's new. So as you can see, as soon as it goes down the to the exit branch here, I am getting an on-state machine exit, but I'm not getting an on-state machine enter. And my guess is that, or I can prove it in a few minutes, but because this is the default state for this layer, it's just after the exit, it's just coming in and triggering the default state. It's not going up here, going through the default thing, and then going into the enter node, which personally I think it should do, because their whole point of making this was to have the entry and exit nodes so that you could encapsulate everything within the substate and have reusability. So, should they even allow default states in here? I'm sure there's reasons why they should, but I think that it should still go through entry. And the other thing that I don't understand is, when you go to the base layer, you can't actually go on to a state machine and set that substate machine as a default state. And in this situation where we want to call a random one of those animations, I just want to say, hey, this is my default state. My random idle is a default state. So anyway, like I said, I'll post a question to Unity and see if that's actually the case. Okay, so I'm going to prove now, or at least what I figured out of why that's not being called. So I'm going to make another idle animation in the base layer. So I'm going to go back to that Triceratops animations, and I'm just going to get another idle, and I'm going to set that as the default layer state, right? So what I'm going to do is basically just play the idle once, and then transition that to my random idle state machine, and I want to transition it to the state machine, random idle state machine. So it's just transitioning to the whole state machine. It's not transitioning directly to a state within the state machine. So you see, let me just show you that again. If I make a transition from here to here, it gives me the option to go directly to any of those states within or to the state machine itself. So if I'm going to the state machine itself, then by definition, at least what it says in the documentation, is then it comes through the entry node. And so I should now get a on state machine enter instead of just here. I was just getting on state machine exits. So this will kind of prove what I was talking about, that now I have the default animation here, and it should come in here. And then let's just, going after that's done, let's just make a transition to here that goes to exit. So then it should come in entry here, then go to the default, then come in here. So it's basically going to play the idle animation every time, and then it's going to come in here, and let's actually do a shake instead. So let's call this, let's make this one the default. Oh, no, this one. Oh, sorry, from here. Set the state machine default state. So let's set that to head shake, and then let's make a transition to here and call that transition, let's not worry about that right now. So anyway, so now it should come in here and do a idle head shake, and then it should come out, go back into entry, do idle, whatever, and I should be getting state machine enter and state machine exit. Okay, so I got my idle, I got state machine enter. I didn't go to the right one there, which is I don't know why. And then I got state machine exit. So I'm getting my state machine enters now and my state machine exits. Okay, so that at least shows you kind of what the issue was. The issue was when I had my default state for this layer set inside this state machine, it was skipping the state machine enter. Okay, so let's get rid of this, and let's get this back to default state, back to idle, and then this is idle anim 1, idle anim 2, idle anim 3. Okay, now let's write the code to do the randomization of this. So from the thing here, basically it just said make or take a random animation. And I'll start with that, but then I'm going to enhance it a little bit. So get rid of the state machine enter stuff, and basically it's just saying animator, set the int. Mine is not called idle index. Mine is called idle anim ID. So I'm going to change this to idle anim ID. And a random range of 0 to 4, which would mean values 0, 1, 2, or 3. Okay, so I have, of course, 1, 2, or 3. And 0 would go in here because this is the default transition. So that should do it. Let's make sure. Oh, I have an error. It says unexpected symbol integer. Oh, I think he had an error in his code, set integer. Okay, so that should all go away. Good. Okay, so now what should happen is comes into the entry state, plays one idle animation, goes into our new state machine. In here, it should get an on state machine enter. When it gets an on state machine enter, it should pick a random number between 0 and 4, set the idle anim ID to one of those values, and play one of these animations. And then go through exit when that animation is done, which basically goes to the exit here, which should come up and do this again. Okay, so let's try that out. So we should get an idle animation, good. Then we should get another idle animation in this case. Then come back here, idle animation. Let's hope I'm not getting the same random number every idle. There we go. So now I got idle bothered that time. Played that one. Should go back to idle animation. Okay, did bothered again. Boy, this is a really good random number generator. And finally, a head shake. Good. Okay. So I guess it kind of works. I don't like the random number distribution on that, but at least it seems like the logic is working. So I'm just going to comment out this exit because we don't really have anything to do with the exit. I just wanted to show you that it was calling it. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to just change this code a little bit to make it a little bit more, so that we have a little bit more way to control the distribution of which animations it's going to play. Okay, so first I'm going to start by making a public string, and this is, I'm going to call this the parameter name, and by default this is going to be idle anim ID, I think I called it. Okay, and that just means for a little bit of reusability of this routine, if I wanted to put it on different sub-state machines, so say I wanted to play, like, you know, pick a random attack animation, then I could change this to attack anim ID, and then it would call it. So I could use it on multiple states. Okay, now this is the thing that's going to control how often it plays each one of the animations. So I'm going to make an integer array here, and I'm going to call this m state ID array, and I'm going to default it to kind of what the default behavior would be in this case. But if I had more than, just a warning, if I did have more than those 4 different states, then it might not trigger all of them because it's only going to pick from one of these. So then I'm just going to change this, I'm going to change this function a little bit, which basically, first I'm just going to do a check of that array. If m state ID array dot length is less than or equal to 0, then I'm just going to call animator dot set ID with m parameter name with 0. This is just safe in case the person, the programmer, forgets or sets the length of this array to 0, and that would just always call the first default element. So that's just a little safety thing. Okay, so then here's where I'm actually going to use the size of the state ID array to pick a number. So I'm going to say int, the index into that array is going to be random.range from 0 to m state ID array dot length. Okay, so that's just basically going to get me a random number within here. And then I'm just going to call animator dot set integer m parameter name, whatever my name is, and the m state ID array of that index. Okay, and that is all there is to it. Now let's put a debug log in there, just so that I know which one I'm going to call. Oh, crap. Debug log. My fingers just must not be the right place on the keyboard right now. So I'm going to say here that I'm going to be going from, so m parameter name plus is going to be set to m state ID array index. So just let me know which one it actually picked. Okay, so let's clear that and let's look here. So as you'll notice, the state machine now does have these parameters, right, which are exposed, so you can set those. So by default, this is set to 0, 1, 2, 3, which is perfect for my use, 0, 1, 2, and 3. But as I'll show you in a few seconds, let's just make sure this works. We should see here which one it's actually transitioning to. Okay, it's going to go to the third one, 0, 1, 2, 3, and it did. Next one, it's going to go to the second one, and it did. So what is bothering me as well is it seems like it's getting one here as well. It shouldn't be. It's getting this. I don't know why it's getting two calls to that. But anyway, we'll worry about that later. Okay, so how would I change the... actually, let's just try, just for the fun of it, see if it's a bug. Go back to the base layer. Let's take this off here. Let's remove the component from there. And let's go in here and add it there to that one. Let's see. Okay, so it's on that one. And on the base layer, it's still going to be on this one. Just don't understand why it's on idle. No, no, no. Doesn't even say it's on this one now, but it does say it's on this one. Let's see if I just get one there. And now I don't get any, of course. I got one. Okay. I don't know why I'm getting it at that point. It's kind of weird. It's like I'm getting it when it goes through this entry. Not what I really would expect, but anyway, it's working and I'm getting just one. Maybe another question for the Unity team. Okay, so anyway, let me get to the point here. I have this array now. Now let's say I wanted this normal idle animation to play a lot more than these three special idle animations. So I'm just going to up this array to like 15. And then just go 0 all the way through. And then 1, 2, or 3. So that basically means that as it comes in here, you know, there's way more entries, 11, 12 entries that would do idle. So any random number that comes between 0 and 11 would actually play the idle animation. All the other ones, if it was a 12, it would play the other one. So anyway, that's a way that you can easily define. There are many different ways that you could do it, of course, but that's just a very simple way that you could allow the user to control how often. So as you'll see, he'll probably get in here and it'll be 0 the vast majority of the time. So I got 0, I got 0, I got 0. There we go to 2. Okay, so once in a while it plays that. And that's kind of the effect we wanted for this thing. Okay, so that is how to do it. I would agree with the guy's comments that it's not as easy. It's not really, it says right here, creating random selector nodes using state machine behaviors in conjunction with the state machine entry node is really easy. I would agree that it's not really easy, but I think it's because there's just some confusion. There's still a little bit of, whether it's a bug or whether it's a lack of documentation, there's a little bit of confusion about when it actually goes through this entry node. But we got it solved. You know, if you didn't want this whole idle animation to play, we could probably go through and create an idle animation that's just a few frames that wouldn't be very long, just to kind of a dummy animation just to get us into the state machine. That would at least be a workaround to get this to work. But hopefully that helps some of you guys figure this out. It is a good, powerful feature.